first time I had cancer, I was 28 years old, and I actually was at a hotel because I was taking the board exam for the certification board for medicine, part 3 of the national boards. And I was in a jacuzzi and I got hit by a water jet sort of funny, and I got a lot of pain in my left testicle. When I actually got back to my room, I was self-examining my testicle and I found a lump. And I was pretty sure it was cancer, but I had to take the exam. When I got back to the base, I went to see the urologist, and I just sort of marched into his office and I said, I'm pretty convinced I have cancer, so I want you to examine me and tell me that I'm crazy and that I don't. He said, let's go over and see the radiologist and have him do an ultrasound. And he said, yeah, it looks like this is cancer. So he said, tomorrow morning, we're gonna do an orchiectomy, or we're gonna cut your testicle off. That was shocking, to say the least. But it turns out that the cancer was not very malignant. It was contained, and so I just needed to have surveillance, which meant that every 6 weeks, and then every 3 months, and then every 6 months, and then every year, I would have to have blood work and CAT scans. So I went through that process for about 10 years, and to be honest with you, didn't really profoundly affect me that much. I mean, I lost a testicle, but I had another one, wasn't that big of a deal. They gave me a falsie, so it was all okay. But just a few months shy of the 10-year mark, I developed some swelling of my other testicle. And I went to see the urologist, and at first it wasn't clear what was going on. But ultimately came to find out that I had developed a second cancer, and this time it had spread. And so I was going to need to have that second testicle removed. I was going to need to have some major surgery to look at the lymph nodes along my spine, and I would need quite a bit of chemotherapy to be able to survive this disease. And it wasn't even clear, because it was at such an advanced stage, whether or not the chemotherapy would actually work. So that got my attention, for sure. At that point, I had just finished the residency program. I was only a couple years into my practice, and had this bright future, but I hadn't really done anything yet. And so I actually can remember begging God for another chance at life. And I feel very fortunate to have survived cancer a second time. It's now almost 15 years since I finished chemotherapy, and I'm healthy and free of disease. But again, another 10 years of surveillance and blood work and CAT scans, every time wondering, am I clear, am I clean, is it okay? So I spent basically 20 years of my 30-year career on the other side of the stethoscope as a patient. And let's put it this way, I much prefer the doctor end of the stethoscope than being the patient. But being a patient taught me a lot about being a doctor. When I was getting ready to have that surgery to remove my second testicle, I had spent the whole day at the Cleveland Clinic meeting with the anesthesiologist, having blood work, and getting everything ready. It was a Friday. It was early in the afternoon when I finally got to meet with my surgeon, who had an entourage of medical students and general surgery resident, urology fellow with him. to talk about what was going to happen. So I was naked, wrapped up in a paper gown on an exam table, wrapped in paper. And my surgeon and these 4 other student doctors or residents each had the opportunity to expose my testicle and examine me and probe my abdomen. And so when it was all said and done, the doctor tells me, we're going to have to remove the testicle, and this is what's going to happen. And once he was done with his dialogue, he asked me if I had any questions. And I asked him if they were going to remove the testicle, if I could get a fake testicle on that side. And he very matter-of-factly and just sort of abruptly said, "No, I'm sorry, we can't do that." I asked him why, because I had one on the other side. And he said that because of the silicone breast implant sort of scares, that they stopped making these implants and that there are none available. And I just started to cry like a baby. I couldn't contain myself. And even though they told me that chemotherapy and surgery may not save my life, finding out that I couldn't get a fake testicle was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I just totally became this irrational, not in control person that the only thing I could do was sob. And I probably sobbed for a long time. The silence in the room was deafening. My surgeon, Dr. Eric Klein, who I thought was sort of cold and detached, just rolled the stool that he was sitting on closer to me and wrapped his arms around me and held me until my tears stopped flowing and I could actually breathe again. And he made really good eye contact with me. And he said, "Look, I get that this is awful. I get that this is horrible. And it seems overwhelming right now. But I promise you that this is just going to be a great story that you're going to be able to tell at a cocktail party someday. I'm going to do everything possible to make sure that you're healthy, happy, and whole again. It's going to be okay." And somehow, he was right. But it was in that encounter that my healing began. And all of the horrible things that I had to go through from that point forward with the chemotherapy and the surgeries, they're all just things I crossed off on a calendar. But I don't know if I hadn't had that moment with him, that I would actually be here to talk to you today. The sad part is that I didn't realize that until at least 10 years later, when a patient tried to kill me, and I realized that I didn't know what care was.